Hey, everybody. Welcome to the wrong end of the snake, a webcast about audio touring and the relationships we have built between our road families. Tater and I have had an 18-year relationship on the wrong end of the snake with bands like Ted Nugent, Kid Rock, Slash, Stone Temple Pilots, Prophets of Rage, Iron Maiden, and most notably, 10 years with Linkin Park. My co-host, Kevin Tater McCarthy, is a world-class monitor engineer with over 30 years in the business. I'm very proud to call him my friend and partner. He has 8 Top Dog Monitor Engineer of the Year awards and 2 Parnelli Monitor Mixer of the Year awards. I'm Ken Van Druten, aka Pooch. I am a front of house engineer with 3 decades in the music industry. I'm a 3-time Grammy-nominated recording engineer. I have 8 Top Dog Front of House Engineer of the Year awards, and I am winner of the Parnelli Front of House Mixer of the Year award. Let's do a little housekeeping. Please use the chat window of the Zoom app to communicate amongst yourselves. If you are streaming from our YouTube channel and you want to get in on the action, register to be on the Zoom call for future episodes. There are links to register in all of our social media. If you have any questions for our guests, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom app and ask in that window. We will answer as many as possible during the hour, and then answer any leftover questions in our overtime Q&A episode that we release to YouTube channel in a few days. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media. YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook is at Wrong End of the Snake. Tater, why don't you introduce us to our guest this week?
All righty. Janine is one of the most sought after tour managers and tour accountants. This is her 29th year of touring, and she's worked for Jane's Addiction, Alanis Morissette, Maxwell, the Three Tenors, Marilyn Manson, Puddle of Mud, Christina Aguilera, Justin Bieber, Def Leppard, Van Halen, Doobie Brothers, Japan. I love Yoshiki, by the way. Joe Walsh, and Melanie Martinez, to name a few. And I've heard of all of those people before. A pretty impressive list. Thank you, Janine Edwards. Welcome to Wrong End of the Snake.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Janine, we're so super stoked that you could join us. Both Tater and I have had the pleasure to work with Janine. She's amazing. And we love her so. And we haven't worked with her for a while, right? It's been
a while.
It's been too
minutes,
long,
as they say. As the kids say, it's been a few minutes.
But we sure would love to work with you again. And let's get into this a little bit. And we always like to start these things kind of finding out what your background is and where you come from. And so tell us a little bit about your early years, because in your little information sheet that you sent us, you talked about this kind of all started with you parking cars, right? Is this how you got into the business?
This is true. Thank you guys so much, first of all, for having me, because this
you're very welcome.
A great joy. I've loved working with you, both of you. I have great experiences touring with both of you, so it's been amazing. Awesome. I was in Concord or Charlotte, North Carolina, as it were, back when I was in high school, and I loved music, and they were just building an amphitheater that seats 24,000 people, and I was 16 at the time, and the only job that I could get was in the parking lot area. That was the only thing I was old enough to do. So I applied and got the job, and it was great because I got to park cars and then go watch the show and get paid to go watch the show. And then I was kind of looking around and seeing what I would do the next year. So the next year I was moved up to parking lot supervisor.
Sweet.
And I was recalling a memory that parking lot A was the one that you wanted, and that was the one that I always got. So when I was 17, I was a parking lot supervisor at the amphitheater. But so same thing, parking cars, got to go see shows. And then being there so often, because the hours were crazy, I just kind of started to realize there was a backstage and there was stuff going on backstage. And I was like, I need to know more about what's going on there. So at 18, I went and applied for a stagehand position, and I had no experience whatsoever. And the stage manager gave me the position called stagehand apprentice, and I applied it towards my college credit. And so I had to journal after every show, and I still have those journals, which is amazing.
Wow.
And and I had to work all the shows, so the load in, the show, and the load out. And I basically just did, I did all the stagehand jobs and stuff like that. But if the runner didn't show up that day for whatever reason, like, you know, whatever reason, I was the runner that day. So it enabled me to learn about all aspects of backstage from that point of view. So it was a really, really good learning experience. And then I went, I think I only did that maybe 2 years. And then I became the production assistant to our production manager. And he had used to having 2 guys fill that position. So I was a female filling in that position, and I was still super young. And I was also doing the crew calls, and I was doing all the crew hours and salary and stuff like that. So like when I left there, I kind of was running the whole backstage area at that point in time. So it was a really, really good learning experience.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you kind of fell into this in that you started working and then you saw, oh, wow, I wonder what those people are doing. This wasn't something that from an early age you were like, I want to work in the music industry, right? This was like,
I knew I wanted to work in the music industry. I was reading the only book around that was like everything you need to know about the music industry, and there was no Googling, and there wasn't the access that there is to all the information now. And my parents were very young when they had me, so there was a lot of music around. Not that anybody played or did anything, but there was just a lot of music around me when I was growing up. And like I was helping, you know, a boyfriend that was a drummer. I was doing like music ad packs with like, you know, the photos and the cassette, and that I was trying to book. I was kind of trying to figure out which area I was going to end up in, because I even did an intern with Arista Records locally, where I was just boxing up promo stuff and sending it off to radio and stuff like that. So I did like every little area, but I just fell in love with, you know, where I am, which is backstage, you know.
That's amazing. I think the learning thing that people that are watching this should kind of learn from is that if you have a focus on something that you want in life, you can come at it from all different angles. And often the angle to getting there is not the path that you think it is. You know what I mean? So in this way, you were, you know, parking cars, and that led you to be in a situation to get what you wanted. And so I think people, especially young people, lose sight of, you know, hey, I want to be a mixer, for example. Well, but you're not going to be a mixer right off the bat. So be the guy that you know sells the beer at the local, you know, joint, and maybe that's a way to get there. You know what I mean? That's my point.
Yeah, I mean, I even worked at a CD store too. Like I just loved music and wanted to be involved however I could be. And I knew that like the more that you learn, the more you learn which is a better fit to you, and what you appreciate more, what is a better fit. I am so appreciative of the fact that I knew what I wanted to do, or at least the genre or the avenue, from a very early age. That's unheard of, you know?
It
so
is.
You're working at the Shed, right? It was the Shed?
Yeah.
There in beautiful Charlotte, Concord, North Carolina. I have friends down there, and I love that area. I love High Point, North Carolina. Yeah. Just thought I'd throw that in there. But how do you make the step now? You're stage handing. You're basically doing everything by your tenure there. Did you see these people coming off these buses and coming in, and they're all tired and everything? You go, I want to do that. You want to step up to that? What was the step that made you now wanted to go on the road?
I started seeing a lot of regular faces, because, you know, like, you know, a lot of the same people do tours, you know? So I started seeing a lot of the same people, and I would stay in touch, and I told everybody that I wanted to go on tour. And I just kind of, and, you know, when the amphitheater wasn't working because the amphitheater only worked during the summer. So I was also working for our local promoter at the time. It was Cellar Door. So I would do shows at the arenas, or I would do shows at the theater and stuff like that. So I was kind of telling everybody, I want to go on the road. I want to go on the road. I mean, I think that was like my tagline. I want to go on the road.
You made it known out there that you when you got there and saw that you wanted to do that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then I was working with Perry Entertainment at the time with a guy named Dave Paiva, who now runs Tour Vouchers, the credential company. And he called me one day, and he knew I wanted to go on the road. He called me one day, and I was in my little high school bedroom in North Carolina. And he's like, I have a tour for you, and it's not what you think. It's not what you would imagine. And I was like, okay. And he's like, you'll have to fly out to Monterey, California, which is the other side of the world now, and interview for this traveling assistant position for Luciano Pavarotti and the Three Tenors. And I was like,
wow,
okay. I really didn't care. I just wanted to go. So I flew out there, and I don't think they looked at my resume very well because they thought I lived in the area, and they were like, okay, you can start tomorrow, but we're not going to hire you as the traveling assistant. We're going to make you a position as the production coordinator. And it was a salaried, full-time insurance, health benefits. Wow. They paid for all of my stuff to be moved there, my car to be moved there. It was an unbelievable, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. But I will say this, I was still in college. I had 6 classes to go, and I had to make a decision. So
I guess we know what the decision was, right?
Yeah, I guess we know what that was.
I haven't finished college yet.
I was wondering if you were taking notes on that, and then you were going to get the credits later or something.
I should have tried.
But that's one of the best stories I've ever heard of, skipping the van, club, bus, trailer, all the way up. You just right there, start off where everybody wants to be.
Bypassed it all and went straight to it, because the Three Tenors is first class, business class, 5-star hotels. They're not messing around, so I did really skip a couple steps.
What was that like after that, though? Like coming back to working for
reality?
Bands? Yeah, coming back to reality. You started with somebody that was like total first class everywhere. And then what was your next client after that?
So my first bus tour was Katie Lang.
Okay.
And I think at that time I would say even till this day, I still don't really realize or recognize or pat myself on the back enough to say that I do what I do. I'll go to shows and I'll be like, oh, I wish I could go on tour. Like in my mind, I'm still that 16-year-old girl that wants to go on tour.
That's awesome.
So I think when I did jump steps to go to Katie Lang, I just was still hungry and so thirsty for experience and learning and knowledge, because I just wanted to do so well. I just always kind of felt like I was trying to do better than the next person,
Yeah.
Trying to get that edge on somebody. So,
I always tell about, this specific thing that we do every week is about relationships. And that's a perfect example of, you had a relationship with Dave Paiva, right? And you never know who's going to be that person to call you, right?
Yeah.
So I always tell people, it's like, if you're coming up in this industry and you're trying to figure out where you're going and what's happening, don't make one enemy, because that one person could have been the person that was going to call you and give you an opportunity like you get,
Yeah.
So, my favorite kind of mantra in all of this is, being at the right place in the right time is a thing, but put yourself in that place, right? Like put yourself to be accepting of that right place of the right time.
Yeah. Mine's always been, you're only as good as your last gig. So you
true.
Always have to be working. You always have to be providing your best of the best service.
Yeah.
There is no lag time or downtime or.
Well, I
some of
think
the-
you hit the nail on the head in the sense that this is a service industry, period.
Yeah.
We're no different than people that work in the hotel industry or, whatever. We provide a service specifically for our clients. And we're trying to make that in whatever we do, a sound, tour managing, whatever, that experience for that client is supposed to be top notch.
And I feel with my job, I get that report card nightly. So I kind of know where I stand every night. You know?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't gotta wait for the end of year review or
end of year
whatever
review.
they call that in the business.
There's a quick turnaround over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Janine's in that spot where she's the one that has to come to you and say,
what happened tonight?
Yeah, what happened? And then she has to go explain to them. How is that? We have built a career on keeping business between our clients. Both Tater and I are guys that are real about the business, and we're here to provide a service for you. And we are not those guys that are like, think that we're going to go hang out with the artist. We're not that. There are guys in this industry that act like that and they seem to get away with it, whatever. But we are very business-like. Even clients that we work for 14 years, we're very, we're friendly with each other, but we're very, it's all about business. What's that like for you as a tour manager and getting close to an artist and all of that?
Yeah, that's a totally different relationship there.
It is. I think it's something I had to learn a long while ago, and I'm not really sure how I learned it, but there's not 800 people calling me during the coronavirus that were artists of mine that's saying, how is your mortgage doing?
Wow.
Did you even have one call you?
It's funny you said that. We've mentioned that quite a few times.
I mean, and listen, that's okay. That's fine. But if they lost their voice tomorrow, they wouldn't check and see how my mortgage is doing it. And that's not, it's just business. I've been in somebody's wedding. I was in Wes from Puddle of Mud's wedding. I was his best woman, and that's how close we were. But I still realize that I'm providing a service. I work for them. It's not like, and I do become friends with these people and stuff like that. But there is this really fine line that you have to maintain and you have to understand. And you can't, nothing can be beneath you in the tour manager position. You're walking dogs, you're getting washing machines delivered, and you're also holding the whole tour up and budgeting, millions of dollars. There is no small task in this position.
Great answer.
That's a really great answer, and I think is a point for also people that even are already in this industry and need to be reminded of that fact that it's like, the reason for your success, I'm sure, is that that's your mantra. I'll do whatever it takes, and we're going to keep the client happy, and that's the way it is.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Awesome. Hey, I think we have a limited amount of time, believe it or not. We're like, we told you that the hour flies by.
Yes.
And since we have a unique opportunity with you here, I kind of want to just get right into discussing about women in this industry specifically and what that's like now and what it was like when you were coming up, because I know it's a lot different than it was 25 years ago. It wasn't the case that it is now. I think that there are a lot more women being accepted in this industry, and I think it's amazing that has happened, but I still feel like it isn't at all what it should be. You know what I mean? Like, there should be way more women in this industry than there is. How do you feel about being a trailblazer and the difficulties of that path for you? What's that like for you? Speak to that a little bit.
I think that's a really iconic word. And I really take that as being a good weight on my shoulder. I am happy to present that format because I've tried to support women throughout the business and throughout the years. I would say from the beginning, I heard LeBron James do this talk recently where he's talking about, thoroughbred horses wear those blinders because they don't want to see what they're just trying to focus on the end of the goal there, or the finish line. And I kind of feel like, in a way, when I was younger and I had such an eye on the prize, if you will, I didn't really kind of see what else was going on. I just was like, I'm going to do this and I want to do this. And I had struggles because I was female, but like, there weren't terrible times where like I was like, I can't do this because I'm female. It was never like that. I always felt like the people that I did work with were really supportive of me and really wanted me to succeed. I think, though, you do have to realize that it is a male dominated world. The touring industry is.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, everybody should do what they're most comfortable with, but like I made a point to like cover up pieces of me. You don't see parts of my body. There's things that are covered up all the time, and I try to like look the part, if you will. Like I'm not trying to go out there, and I just want to do my job, So I think for women, I think that that's probably what you do need to do to be respected, because you're going to get looked at in a different way, because the girls that are backstage that are doing things that are questionable, yes. they don't look like the dudes, so like you kind of have to fit in with the dudes to run with the dudes, and I didn't have a problem with that. That's fine. I don't mind doing that. And I still go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah. But now I've seen lately, and I always say this because, this is the only business I've ever been in. I'm in my 50s now, and I've always felt that I live in this little bubble where I don't want to say protected by all this stuff that's going on, but you live in this bubble and stuff that doesn't affect you. You don't think about it a lot. And I've seen a lot lately. I've seen women in our industry, and not necessarily road people, but I saw the other day someone suing a company because they said they got unequal pay. Now, do you feel that? I mean, that's something I would thought would never happen in the touring industry. You hire somebody to do a job, the band's offering this much, and nobody sits down and go, "Oh, it's a female, you pay her less." Do you think that happens?
I think it happens, and I've heard some friends say that it has happened specifically to them. But I honestly think it's not about male female. I actually think it's about somebody cut a better deal.
See, that's what I was. I'm glad you said that, because I was kind of wondering. It's like, every production manager is or tour manager is trying to get somebody in the budget, right? And they want to pay a certain amount and all that kind of stuff. So I was just wondering how much it is, like you thought, male, female, or like you say, somebody just cut a better deal.
Yeah. And like, I think, a lot of times you can use experience, how many years you've done something as, what you get paid and stuff like that. Or I think your worth, or what you think you're worth. And there's some people that I think should get paid more that don't value their worth. I think that it's all in the deal that you cut, and it's personal to you.
Okay. Let me just, this might not be totally on subject here, but getting into the COVID thing, which I don't really like to talk about, but we'll get into it a bit. What do you, as a tour, I'm just asking because you're a tour manager, and I just want to know this personally. What do you think coming out of this, if you're a little crystal ball there, what do you think coming out of this, do you think is going to happen to those negotiations and pay rates and salaries and stuff?
I think it's too hard to say at this point. It depends on when we go back. There's so many variety of things, there's so many things that play into that whole thing. I know that, there's so much talk about the guarantees are going to be less, and the client's going to be told to take on more insurance, and then we will be asked to be taken less and stuff like that. But I think for the artists that are established artists and that are touring and normally touring, like we've all had the luxury of working with, I think that it's going to stay in line, because they're going to know what they had to pay for, and they know the quality of work that we are providing and stuff like that. When it comes to the smaller band or the unknown band or the people that are just starting to tour, it's going to be probably a different world. But that's something that we've seen, you know, when CDs went away, or, you know, like touring became more popular than what it is, you know.
So I'm going to read into that. Brush up on your negotiation skills, no matter what.
Yes. There's a master class.
Time to brush up on that.
That's awesome. Hey, you said something earlier that I really thought was great. And you were talking specifically about how it's not so much about being a man or a woman, or, you know, even when we're talking about racial things, but it's about being good at your job, right? And I've always felt like that. Like, I know that Tater and I specifically, when we worked with you for the first time, which I think was Puddle of Mud,
Yes.
we didn't walk away from that going, yeah, man, Janine was awesome for a girl. We went, Janine is awesome. You know what I mean? That's like the difference is that I think that people get lost in that. And so do you feel like there's a double standard, like in regards to women and people of color for that matter? You know, are women and people of color like not given opportunities because of their gender or color? Is that a truth right now, do you think?
I think, you know, sometimes being females even helped me. You know, the current tour that I was on with Melanie Martinez, they wanted a female because she was female and she's 24 and she's young and she's pretty guarded, and I would have to be in with all the quick changes and doing all the in-ear monitor switches and wardrobe stuff and stuff like that. And so they wanted a female. So sometimes being female is served me well. Sometimes being female has not served me well. You know, it's artist specific. And that's the thing, is like, for the tour manager position, it's not personal. Like, if you do get removed from a tour because you don't get along with the artist per se, then that's not about your job performance necessarily. That's about you and the artist don't click. And people, you don't get along with everybody. I don't get along.
That happens to men too. I mean, you know, it's not gender related for sure.
So I think that it's, I don't know. I think it's your own mindset too. If you're constantly like, I'm female, or if I, you know, like I'm different or whatever, or like I should be treated special, then I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to go about it. You should just be like, I'm a person and I do a really great job. So fuck you.
No, they're fantastic.
Exactly. Do you think that women in general, and this may not apply to you because you're such a badass, but do you think that women in general are being asked to be better than men in their roles in order to have that position?
That's a hard question for me to answer, because I always was like, I'm going to be better, right? That's I'm
what
gonna
you
be
said.
fucking better.
I'm going to be better. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman.
No. Yeah. I am going to do whatever it takes, and I'm going to work whatever hours, and I'm going to give it all I've got. And if it doesn't work out, it's not on me.
Cool.
You know, I did everything I could.
Let me backtrack a bit, because I heard you saying, you know, I put the in-ears on the artist and the quick change and doing all that kind of stuff. So before you got that fantastic first gig with the Three Tenors, when you were stagehanding, did you try to kind of peek around at audio, lights, video? I'm sure being the runner helps, seeing what people ask for and need to go out and get. But did you kind of try to know, because you're a tour manager, kind of got to know all those jobs? How did you kind of backtrack it a bit and try to know all those jobs? You know, starting off in that position what you got.
Yeah, when I being the stagehand apprentice, because I was filling in for so many jobs. Sometimes I even filled in for the box office assistant because it was a festival show and they wanted specifically a box office manager and stuff like that. So that was really great. And we had a sister amphitheater up in Raleigh, which was only 2 hours away. So sometimes I would drive up there and do shows up there. Like if they were back to backs, I would just try to do as much as I could. And now I can speak from a really knowledgeable position of those other jobs because I've done those other jobs, not maybe full time, but I did them for a day or whatever. And the runner, you know, being a runner is when the runner comes back to me in Chicago and says, I've lost $100. No, that's not going to fly. The promoter's going to have to pay for that. Sorry. But I think it's just, that gives you a leg up to, you know, when you've done so many other positions and stuff like that. And when I worked for Pavarotti and the Three Tenors, it was kind of an odd job because we were in-house promoting, and we built those shows. They were taking opera to an arena setting, which, you know, normally you'd find it in a theater setting. And they would, so we would put all this greenery, and we'd have to rent all this furniture, and it was all very, very specific to the artist, but we did all that, and I did all the budgeting. I've worked in money. That's the biggest thing I would suggest anybody, if you want to get into this, just start working with some money, even just learning how to be organized and keep all your money straight, because you're going to work with it regardless of what you do. Even you guys have to turn in receipts, or you have to, like, if they're saying we have to find this flight that's only this much, and you guys are coming from another tour or what, you know, like it's always around. Money's always around.
Yeah, I mean, even from an audio perspective, we often are asked to put together budgets for a production manager about what's going on. And certainly from my, you know, when I was younger and doing tours where I was the production manager and the front of house guy and the whatever, you know, I learned
T-shirts.
I learned a lot about that for sure.
So I'm wondering though, if they would have just given you a stagehand job without apprenticing, you may not have learned as much or been able to float around as much to get all this knowledge in.
Yeah.
So I was maybe lucky that it was an apprentice type job.
Yeah, and I only got paid like $2 less, which like for me at that age and the crew guys, what they were getting paid, like I was like, I'm still making bank. Like, this is good. Like, I'm good. And plus I had more hours than everybody, which I think some of the older, you know, because crews, you know, indoctrinate in that, you know, legacy crew, and the longer you've been there, the more hours you get. I think that part might have pissed off some people because I always had a full show day. And, but yeah, no, I mean, it was a blessing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You know, one of the things, you know, I don't want to keep beating up the woman thing, but, you know, you're here and you're a woman in this industry and people want to know about it. You know what I mean? So one of the things that I've actually seen or heard roadies say to me is that they don't want women on the road because it turns into, you know, Days of Our Lives. There's always a woman that wants to hook up with a roadie. And it always goes poorly, especially for the other people that live on that bus, let's just say, who are now in the middle of this relationship that usually doesn't go well because we're all living together and working together and, you know, all of those kind of things. And I don't know if you've tried to have a relationship on the road with other people, other guys or whatever, but would it speak to that a little bit that, you know, a woman coming up in this industry, how do they get ahead without having that whole thing happen? Do you know what I mean?
First of all, I know that like Michael Bublé, he said, I don't want women on the road because they cause drama. And
wow.
I was like,
really?
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I have had relationships on the road. I can say that my biggest thing is if you say a word, we'll be done, because it's just nobody's business. And
that's awesome.
I can't take that sort of drama or whatever. It can't happen. Like if we're going to hang out and be together, which I know that it inevitably happens, we get thrown into these weird positions and it's like love the one you're with and you know, those types of things happen. But I just don't want the drama. I don't want the drama at work, and I don't want anyone to know anything about my personal life. It's just so unprofessional to bring any of that to work. you can't do that at your dentist office.
At a normal job, right? You can't do that. Yeah, when you work somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's especially tough for us, right? Because we all live together 24/7. So, you know, I mean, I've seen the flip side of what you're talking about, where a you know, whatever, production assistant or a girl shows up, starts having relationships with multiple guys on the tour, and then all of a sudden it starts to turn into this slut shaming kind of a thing, and it gets ugly. And, you know, I mean, honestly, all of us on the road are a little bit damaged going out on the road. And so, you know, it's easy to fall into the drama of all the things that are happening. And I think it's a common mistake that women make going out on this, is not keeping it professional. Does that sound right?
I wouldn't say it's all the woman's fault, though.
No. I'm not saying that at all.
I know. I'm just saying, but like, dudes are just as you know.
Men are worse. Men are the wolves that are like, you know,
at fault.
Yeah.
But I think that listen, both of you are adults. You're both out on a job. If you decided to go in this together, you better have your shit together and say, you know, have a discussion about it. And how are you going to do it with it? Like, because if not, you are unfortunately in the position in the job that we are. The woman is going to take the blame, and she is going to take the brunt of it, and she is going to be the one that caused all the trouble. It's unfortunate.
Even when you're the boss?
Yeah, even when you're the boss.
Yeah. Okay, just check, because you're coming from a little bit tiny bit different angle, just because you're the boss out there. So, okay, just checking out.
I just wouldn't want anyone ever speaking about me like that, ever. Like on the road. I only want good comments about me out there.
I mean, totally. I'm just curious about it. I personally, in my 30 years, have never attempted to have a relationship with the opposite sex on the road, and I've just watched it from afar. So it's interesting to me that you're giving advice to those people that want to have a relationship that's like, man, keep it tight.
I am a single woman now. I work 29 years in this business. If I told you I hadn't dated somebody on the road, that would be like such a huge lie. There's so many dudes and only so many women, you know. They're all messed up. So it's inevitable to happen.
No, because you meet people there, and that, you know, it's with them a long time now.
Listen, you're going through the same situation. You can bitch about work to each other. You can commiserate together. You can order room service together. I mean, it's a win-win at times. But no, I mean, I wouldn't suggest it, and I wouldn't publicize it.
The only problem I think I've ever had an issue with it, excuse me, is when, you know, I've been on a few tours where, like, let's say and this wasn't a road person really. This was like a production manager hiring his wife or girlfriend as the production assistant. And then all of a sudden our bus doesn't have a back lounge anymore because it's their bedroom. And people have gotten away with that. I haven't seen that in a few years. That hasn't happened in my situation, but it happened to me a few times in my earlier career. And I think now how wrong that really was. And we didn't stand up and say anything. And, you know, how can you are the boss or not? How can you take over the back lounge of a bus that's supposed to be shared and all that kind of stuff? So I think that's a little weird. I don't know if that happens now, but that's the only time I ever really have any issues with it.
I always remember being jealous of those situations. Like, why is this person able just to hire their wife? They might not have any touring experience, and I'm working my ass off, and I want to get on a tour, and I can't because this guy hired his girlfriend. And I do find it is a lot of that dude hiring female to be an assistant scenario, and that sucks.
Right? You know what? Yeah, that's a good point, because I never really thought of that. Like, because she's married or dating him, she has an automatic in to do a job not qualified that somebody else, you know, this doesn't have to be male and female either. I mean, somebody hiring their partner who doesn't have the experience to get the job, when there's people that have worked years that would die for that job. So yeah, I'm seeing it a little different. So I get it. Yeah. Never thought of it like that. Like, that kind of took a job away from somebody that probably earned it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just speaks to what you said earlier, and just be badass at what you do. You know, it doesn't really matter if you're a guy or a girl or an alien. If
Yeah.
you're, you know, if you're an amazing tour manager, then you're an amazing tour manager, and that's just it.
Yeah.
Tell us, let's get away from that shit for a little bit and tell us what your, can you tell us, I always ask tour managers this because this is my favorite. You guys are like the closest to artists. So, you know, I have my own funny stories about like working for Kiss, you know, and going into to meet Gene Simmons in the dressing room and how horrible that was. And, you know, tell us, what do you have any of those like favorite stories? You don't have to tell us the artist if you don't want to, but is there something that you have had along the way where you've been like, holy crap, this is the weirdest experience?
I've had a bunch of those. I have a bunch of those great stories. One involves a baby fetus.
Okay.
I'll start with that one.
Okay.
I worked for a client, and I was helping out at the house for a little while, and one of their cats had knocked over a formaldehyde baby fetus. Back in the day on eBay, they used to sell baby fetuses. This is so messed up, but they used to sell baby fetuses on eBay. So
you've just told us who the artist is for sure. So without saying anything.
So the client
anyway,
had a baby fetus. Baby fetuses. Actually, I think it was a couple. But this cat had knocked over the baby fetus, and all I heard was just like the crash, and then all this yelling and screaming. And I walk in the room, and it's just formaldehyde everywhere, and like that was a really crazy story. But my favorite story, I will share who it is too, because I this person I don't think would mind. But this was my first tour managing job, but it was with Puddle of Mud. And Wes, I went to meet him, and he had changed his flight, and I kind of didn't know how, you know, sporadic he was, and like I didn't know any of his characteristics or anything about him. And I go to meet him, and we got on the bus, and we said hello, and then I went into the venue for 2 seconds, and I came outside, and he's at the back of the bus throwing up, and I was like, all right, this is a really great way to start. So I went into the bus, and I grabbed a paper towel, and I put some cold water on it, and I put it on his neck, and I was like, are you okay? And he was like, I'm okay. And he goes, that was really nice. He goes, I think we're gonna get along great. I was just like, so awesome. Yep, I do too. that was a really odd first day.
That's the beginning of a relationship. I mean, you must have seen stuff in your career that is just like, what, you know, especially people that are kind of, I don't know any better way to say it, but they're falling apart. How do you know, because I have watched friends and family and myself even, you know, falling apart in a alcoholic drug kind of a way. What's that like as a tour manager? Like how do you continue to do your job when you watch your client just, you know, falling apart?
It's really tough, you know. It's really challenging because I think that it depends on your relationship too. I've had relationships with people where they want to have me see them in a certain light, so they're kind of hiding their situation. But totally. I know what's going on, you know, and you just are just trying to be there for them in any way possible, because it's also a factor of their schedule is so crazy, and the promo and the press and the things that they have to do even before the show that has put all this other pressure on them, as opposed to what they're even just the demons that they're dealing with inside. So I think it's really challenging, and this job is all consuming for artists and crew. We've missed weddings and friendships and relationships, right, and stuff like that. And so I think just trying to be there as much as you can. At the end of the day, we might get hired by management and we might get hired by the agency or referred or whatever, but our paychecks come from the artists, you know, and so you're really having to navigate for the client, not for management and not for the label and stuff like that. So I think it's really challenging to see people that you love hurting themselves and not taking care of themselves, but all you can do is try to be there for them. They're not going to fix themselves on their own. That's the biggest thing I've learned. They're not going to do any of the recovery or any of the rehab or any of that stuff until they're ready as a person. And you can offer those ways out and stuff like that, but
yeah, until they're ready.
Yeah.
I guess let me ask this kind of in that vein a little bit. And I always say I don't like to talk about COVID, but here I go again.
You're the COVID advocator.
You are. You got COVID on the brain.
I don't want to talk about COVID, but it just kind of right now is where we've all been home. We've all been home for, you know, longer than any of us have ever been home. Are you finding any new interests, other things you're doing, other jobs? How are you keeping in the loop or maybe not in the loop? Especially as the summer's here, because you're usually never home in the summer.
I know. This has been a roller coaster of emotions and rides and stuff like that. I work with a life coach occasionally. Her name is TC Conroy, and she's toured before, and she's amazing. So like whenever I feel like kind of pushed to the edges and stuff like that, I always reach out to her, and it's always nice to speak to her. I've really tried to embrace something that like Eckhart Tolle says, that you have to treat this moment like as if you personally handpicked it for yourself. So acting as if I was supposed to be home right now, or trying to enjoy the little thing. I love cooking, so I cook, and I walk every day, and I read every day, and I've done some master classes. And I will say that I was lucky. I was on a retainer with a client until May. And I think that when everybody kind of freaked out in March when this happened, I had a later freak out. My freak out was in May. Right. And I think that you have to honor all those feelings, because I feel a loss about traveling. I feel a loss about, as we talked about earlier, about touring never being really the same again. And I think you have to kind of process those feelings and honor those feelings and kind of sit with those feelings and be okay with the fact that this is what's happening and we have no control. And the only good thing about it is we're all in this together. It's not like you call a friend and they're like, I'm doing great. We're all kind of doing not so great.
That's what I kind of said was one of the, and this doesn't sound like a positive, but I'm taking it as a positive. We're not slow right now. The industry isn't having a bad time. There's none of that. To me, there's no hope at all right now. So it's not like you come into the office and wait for the phone to ring. Hey, there's a tour or something. So you got to kind of really shift, because there is nothing going on. There's zero going on. Yeah. And so you can't really get your hopes up. You got to really focus on other stuff. At least that's what I'm trying to do, because that phone's just, it's not going to ring. There's nobody's doing any shows.
No.
So
I really liked what go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said I really liked what she said about living in the moment and not focusing on the future, because the problem is that our future is so uncertain. If we could be told that on October 15th we're going to start working again, all of us are smart enough to like gather up our things and be like, okay, we're going, here we go. And all I got to do is make it to October 15th and everything's going to be great. But that's not what's happening. So I work very hard, definitely, like what you said about living in today. And today is today and whatever. I'm not going to worry about what's coming up.
I think the good thing about us is that our jobs are really uncertain anyway. Like the client could get sick tomorrow and the tour would be canceled. I think we're used to being able to shapeshift and to be, able to adapt. but this is such and life is an unknown, but we think we have some sort of control. We don't have any control of any of this. So like,
Yes.
but I think that this adds on top of this, and it's an unknown on top of an unknown on top of an unknown. And it's a lot. It's a heavy vibe to take on, you know?
I know for me, I know what you're talking about, where, you know, our normal is unknown, right? Like we finish a tour and we go, okay, well, I guess I got to figure out what I'm going to do next. But the difference here is that I have always had faith, even when I first started in this industry, of like, okay, a tour just ended, something else is going to come along. And luckily for me, that's been the truth of it. You know, something has come along, you know, right when I needed it. That's just not the case right now. That's the difference for me.
I think I had to learn that over time, because I would get off a tour and immediately get anxious and be like, when I was super young, and it was like, oh my God, I got to find another tour. Like it was just so much like, I can't be home, you know, like, and now I'm just like, I mean, pre this, I was like very happy. I would try to make the most of being at home, and I'm still trying to make the most now. It's just harder to kind of maintain that. Like, I don't want to work this hard to lose a whole career. I don't want to have to think about plan B. I'm sorry I didn't have another option, another career ready on the side, but I was busy maintaining the career that I was doing. So like, you know.
Well, I know. I mean, I think that it's not about figuring out what another career is, but it's about a pivot of that if it comes to that. So, you know, for me being a sound guy, it's like, okay, how can I pivot my live sound experience into being something that is needed, like a broadcast guy or a, you know, whatever it is. You know, I mean, your skills as an accountant and as a leader are really, you know, valuable. I saw interesting, you know, Rich Barr. Rich Barr posted something on LinkedIn where he posted his resume that he had just reworked to be in this COVID time period that didn't list any of the stuff of him being a production manager and any bands. It didn't list any of that. All of it was, you know, I'm a team builder. I have spent years pulling people together and, you know, whatever in corporate speak so that he could get a job. And I thought that was really interesting. He posted that as an example so that others could see that this would be a pivot.
We work with a lot of smart people.
Yeah, we do work with a lot of smart people.
And we're taskmasters, you know, we're problem solvers. We're used to having stuff thrown at us and being able to pivot. It's just, how far are we supposed to pivot? Are we supposed to pivot out?
What do you, that's, you know, I was gonna say that. What about, you know, I can't speak for everybody. I'm fortunate. I can outweigh most or outweather most of this storm, I think. Very fortunate, blessed. But what about like a 20 young, I don't even say the age, just somebody that hasn't been in the business long and they've had to find another job. And what happens if this goes long enough where enough people are finding other jobs? And if you're good at being on the road and like you say, taskmasters and all that stuff, they might get a promotion or two of this kind of temporary job and may not want to come back. That could hurt our industry.
I think that there's a lot of techs and people that don't, maybe, I wish that they were saving smarter and they were getting health insurance. I wish we all were taking better care of ourselves for these long-term situations like this. I will say this, that it's going to weed out some people for sure. People aren't going to stay, and sorry, but I think that maybe that was meant to happen, you know. I hired on my last tour for my production assistant a girl, and I did not know this at the time, but I met her. She was a runner. She was amazing that day. I worked with her one day, right? I hired her to be my production assistant. She showed up at Lidditz for our first rehearsal day, and she goes, you know, that was my first day being a runner. And I was like, whoa. What? So I took her on like I hadn't done before because of, I think, with age, because I was like, whatever she does, I'm going to support her. I'm going to be really, because I think I told you guys, my first mentor he rode my ass the whole time. And I'm stronger for it. But like when she messed up, I wanted to be there for her and I wanted to explain because she just didn't know, and that's fine too. And I'm really proud of the way that I was able to help her. And she's 24. She is back in Nashville. She's bartending, but she's caught in the bug. Now that she's been on tour, she misses it. She wants to do it again. She wasn't sure. She didn't come from our world. She used to work at an elevator servicing company for a bit, after college and stuff like that. And so like she didn't know if she was going to like it or not, but she loves it. It's in our blood once you get bitten by this. And I'm sure you guys have heard the term where this is like stripping. It's hard to get out.
It is. The money's great.
The money's great.
Yeah.
Hard to get out.
yeah. I'm on a pole.
What can I say?
Yeah, but I mean, it is what you say. I think, God, I feel like sometimes that I'm my own father. I'm like, these damn kids, they don't know shit about.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, get off my lawn. Because I think that we grew up in a time period or came up in this industry in a time period where it was acceptable to be, like you said, your mentor, coming after you going, that's bullshit and you're fucking up. And it made me be better at what I do. But now it's weird. Like I am that guy now. And if I speak to this younger generation like that, like I've literally watched a kid and in his eyes be like, and as I'm yelling at him, I realize this kid has never been spoken to like this.
No, they don't
ever. And I'm like, ugh.
They don't have the backbone, or they weren't, it's a different generation. So they were taught like to be kind of groomed in the trophy. Everybody gets a trophy vibes, and you're hurting my feelings, and and it's a different vibe. And I look at it this way. If that was your daughter or your son, how would you want their mentor to treat them? Would you want them to groom them and give them the tools to succeed? And then 2, this industry, I think that a lot of us have stayed on with some older clients, but I think in order to grow and age gracefully, we are going to have to be more open-armed to younger clients, younger managers. I had a manager. I sat down across from a manager, and a manager goes, "So how long have you been doing this?" 29 years. "Oh, I'm 29. I was like, "Shut the fuck up." It's like, oh boy, this is going to be a good time. So like, I think though, if we want to grow in this industry as much as we do, we have to embrace and support those younger artists, younger managers, and younger people in the business. And that'll help us succeed. They're going to make us look good if we help them. And I'm sorry, but the Rolling Stones can't tour forever. They're gonna go, and not tour. And whoever else that's aging gracefully out of the business, we have to. If we want to stay in the business, we have to work with younger artists.
And I think Linkin Park did that for me a bit because, I always worked for bands that were pretty much my same age, and they were exactly 10 years younger than me. And I think I changed course a lot because of them. And but this is a kinder and gentler business now. There's no doubt about it. If I would treat anybody the way I was treated in my first 10 years, you'd be fired instantly. But I think we're better for it now. I think I like it a little bit better this way. So
it's
definitely
different.
I think it's just navigating through what the generation is and how people are reacting to the world right now. I recently, a couple of years ago, worked for an artist that was very young, 21 years old, and first major tour, and they were selling out, giant arenas. And the first time that I met this artist, I was brought into the dressing room, and he's like, "Hey, what's up, sound guy?" And I go, nice to meet you. I'm Ken Pooch Van Druten. Really nice to meet you. And he goes, yeah, whatever, sound guy. Hey, how come, and then asked me a question. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
This is where we're at, huh? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It takes all kinds.
Yeah.
All I can say.
Well, listen, Janine, we've run out of time. We told you it was going to go fast. And thank you so much for coming.
You.
Yeah. And we love you. And we definitely want to go out on some fun tour.
Yeah, let's do it.
Soon.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon.
Soon.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks for
I'm
coming.
going to call you just to practice my negotiation skills. And start learning
Let's do it. Let's start it. Let's do it. That could be my pivot. That could be my pivot.
You can be a salaried negotiator mentor. You can tell us all how to. That's right.
Yes.
So from the tour manager side, this is what I would be thinking when you said this. Yeah,
when you said that, no, I didn't hear any confidence in your voice.
I love it. That's your pivot. Perfect. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Hey guys, next week on Wrong End of the Snake is Robert Long. Robert is one of the most sought after production managers and show designers for over 25 years in the business. Robert has worked for some of the biggest bands in various roles. He is the production manager for Kiss and Motley Crue simultaneously, while designing shows for the likes of Coldplay, The Weeknd, Kiss, Imagine Dragons, The Lumineers, Rihanna, Pentatonix, Jay-Z, Halsey, Motley Crue, G-Eazy, Depeche Mode, and Game of Thrones concert experience with his partner Sooner Ruthier.
That guy's doing all right.
He's doing okay. Yeah. Robert and I have a long history. I first met Robert when he was probably 19 years old. So that'll be a really fun discussion next week. Tune in. I know Tater's been around him for at least 20 years, right?
Yeah, probably 20 years now. Yeah. It is 2020. Yeah, probably at least.
Yeah. We are in 2020. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, again, Janine, thank you for coming. And
thanks so much.
Thanks for all you guys out there tuning in, and we'll see you next week.